All right, good morning, Aiden. You're the only one in here right now. I am going to start up in just a couple minutes, but since there's only one right now, I will wait until 8:10 and then I will start up. All right, it is just about 8:10, so as I am recording, all right, I'm just going to start going over this. I will tell you very quickly, you may have noticed that it took a little longer than normal to get into the meeting today, and my internet connection from home here dropped earlier today, and now it's back. And I'm hoping that there won't be any kind of problems, but I guess we'll see. So let me first, hopefully what you see on your screen right now is an email I just sent out about 20 minutes ago. All right. And Aiden, I don't know if you were the one, I don't remember, but somebody had alerted me to the fact that on the Teams recording from Tuesday, when I went over chapters 2 and 3, for some reason it cut out after an hour and 47 minutes and it left off the chapter 3 stuff. So this morning I went back and I re-recorded it. And as it says there, I used Camtasia for this. Since I use Camtasia, which is a screen sharing program, and I did not use Teams, that particular video is only available on my YouTube channel, and that's the address for it right there. All right. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot as you are the only one here. So we will go over the written test for chapters 1 to 3, but I think I'll just flip the order of this just in case anybody else comes. When you take your test, your test is scheduled to be given on Monday. All right. And this is for everybody. So this test is scheduled to be given on Monday. There are 3 problems. The first problem is worth 25 points. The second problem is worth 25 points. The third problem is worth 50 points. The first problem, literally, and I'm not making this up, after you create your program, you can probably do this problem in about 5 minutes maximum. It's very easy. All right. That's all I'm going to say about it. The second problem, it's not as easy, but it is it's similar to the one that we did as a class yesterday, where we put in a bunch of test scores and then we got the average. Remember that if for instance, the 12 of you in the class, I would never do anything like this, but I could take the number of points that people accrued on their first test, and I could add them all up and divide by 12 and get an average, right? Okay, and it wouldn't be very hard to do, but I could also figure out who had the highest test score and who had the lowest test score and the sum of all the test scores. If you understand how to do all that stuff, you'll do fine in number 2. Number 3 is similar to this one. I created this myself, and I wanted to do something that was similar to the problem, but not the problem itself. So I thought that isn't fair. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy everything I have right here. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. All right. Now I'm going to start up Visual Studio. Once it starts up, all right, Once it starts up and I get into it, I'm just going to create a new project. You're not seeing this. I get it. It'll be a console app.NET framework, C#, and I'm going to literally just call it tacos. Why? Because this is meant to be a tacos program. And I'm going to save this particular program. All right, I'm going to save this. I'm going to put a folder on my desktop that I'm going to call tacos. Right, so I've done all that. And again, I'm creating it and it's on my desktop and it's called tacos. All right. And I'm just going to click create. Now, the reason I did that, all that stuff kind of offline, so to speak, is now I should be able to change my share and I can change it, change my share to Visual Studio, and hopefully you can see Visual Studio on your screen right now. All right. So with all that said, let me put that comment back in here. There it is. All right, I'm going to pretty it up just a little bit here, so just give me a second. Yeah, that's fine. I'll leave it the way it is. I want to input this information here. And actually, I want to input these 7 pieces of information. Then I want to calculate these 3 pieces of information. And finally, I want to create a very simple looking receipt that looks like this. So as I'm going through this, as always, if something does not make sense, by all means, what's going on here? By all means, please stop and ask me. All right, I have no problem going and explaining or re-explaining or doing anything like that. That's what I'm here for. And again, you're kind of behind the 8 ball there, Aiden, because you're still the only one here right now. All right. But like I said, as we get going, hopefully other people will be joining us. I guess we'll find out. All right. So how do I do this? Well, I'm going to need a string variable for the first name, a string variable for the last name, a string variable for the address, a string variable for the city, a string variable for the state, a string variable for the zip code. Now, back in the olden days, zip codes were only 5 numbers. They didn't have 5 numbers and then a hyphen and 4 other numbers like some of them show now. But still, really, even if the zip code was still just 5 numbers, I'd still make it a string. The only types of variables technically that you really and truly should make numeric types of variables, the only type are the type that could possibly be used in some kind of a calculation. And if it's not going to be used in a calculation, you really shouldn't make it a numeric variable. All right, so I'm going to come down here and I also am going to have two different constants, one for the price of a taco and one for the tax percentage. So I'm going to start by coming in here and at the top, before I get into main, I'm going to put in a comment that says program constants, and I'm going to put those 2 things in here. So I'm going to say const decimal, and I'll just call it taco price. And I'm going to set that equal to 2.99M. And I'm going to have another const decimal, and we'll call it tax rate. And I'm going to set that equal to 0.0825M. And I didn't just pull those numbers out of the air. Again, those were the ones, 299 and 8.25%. So now those 2 variables or constants, which is a special kind of variable, they're now available to me in my program. All right. So now I'm going to create a bunch of other variables. I'm going to say string first name. All right. I'm going to say string last name. string address, string city, string. Notice the IntelliSense is already kicking in. It can kind of figure out what I want. So I now have first name, last name, address, city, state, and I'll do the zip in a second. All right, so I've got that. And then I'm going to want another string. I'm sorry, not another string, an int. And we're just going to call that num tacos bought. Maybe it's a stupid name, but it's the one I'm going to use right there. All right, so I've got that. So I now have first name, last name, address, city, state, state, zip, and the number of tacos. Then I'll need these three variables also. Okay, and those will be subtotal, tax total, and final total. So I will have a decimal for subtotal. I will have a decimal for tax total, and I will have a decimal for final total. And that should be all the variables that I need. Again, the problem that you will do for number 3, which is worth 50 points when you take your first test, is similar to this. Not identical, but similar. All right, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, I'm going to have a bunch of console.write lines in here. So console.write line. Enter first name. All right, and I won't even want write line. I want those to be writes. Okay, and this then will say first name equals read line. All right, and it has to be console.readline. So let me fix that. All right, and I'm going to just copy this down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so enter first name, enter last name, enter address, enter city, enter state, enter zip code, and finally we will want to enter, what do we call that? Num tacos bought. Now for that one, since it's a number, I can't just put it in there like this. I'm going to get an error. All right. So I have to say convert dot to int 32 console.readline. All right. Just so this reads a little bit nicer, I don't have to do this, but just so it reads a little bit nicer, what I'm going to do is before all of these, I'm going to, other than the first one, I'm going to put a \n in there, and that's just going to put in a new line. So it's like I hit the enter key. All right, now I'll come back to it, but for now, I'm just going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to run this. All right, so enter first name, Jeff, enter last name, Scott, enter address 755 Parr Road, which is Rankin, enter city, Wentzville, enter state, Missouri, enter zip code. I should make that capitalized so it looks like the rest. 63385. Enter number tacos bought 5. Now it's not doing anything else right now, but I am able to input all of my information. All right, so I'm going to make that a capital Z just so these look like the rest, and a capital C, and I'll capitalize that and that, oops, and that. All right, so now from what I asked at the beginning, I've now got all this. I have queried the person for all of that information. So I have to figure out these last three things, my subtotal, my taxable total, and my final total, and then I have to output all of this. So that's what's left to do. And again, if you have any questions while I'm doing this, please ask, but otherwise, I'm going to assume it makes sense to you. All right. So what do we have left to do? Well, first we have to figure out our subtotal. And subtotal is equal to the number of tacos bought times the taco price. Okay. So if I bought 5 tacos, it would be $2.99, or 5 times $2.99. All right, so I've got a subtotal now. The tax total, well, it already figured it out for me. It's partially, it's equal to the subtotal times the tax rate. All right, and then finally, we've got our final total, and that's going to be equal to our, so our final total, and that's going to be equal to our subtotal plus our tax total. Right? So now I have figured out, I've already inputted these 7 things, and I have now figured out these 3 things. So the only thing that's left to do is to do this. All right. And I don't think that's too difficult, so let's just do it. So I'm going to come in here, and these are going to be a bunch of write lines. So console.writeLine, and I'm just going to say taco receipt. Okay. All right. We'll put a couple blank lines before that. And it'll say first name, followed by the person's first name. That already is a string, so I don't have to write toString on there. Let me copy this a bunch of times. All right. And I don't need to have the blank lines after each one of these. I want it to look like it was asked for in there. So there's the first name, and then last name. And then next is the address. And then the city. And then the state. And then the zip code. Now, this is going to look a little bit jumbled on the screen, and that's okay. All right. So I'm just going to put a read line here. I'm not done, but I'm going to put a console.readline. Again, just so it doesn't whip off the page. Save that and let's run it. First name, Jeff, last name, Scott, address 755 Parr Road, city, Wentzville, state, Missouri, zip code 63385, Number of tacos bought, let's say 5. And there's my receipt so far. All right, first name Jeff, last name Scott, address, city, state, and zip. I don't know why I've got first name there again, but it's all, so far at least, it looks like it's all working. All right. So a couple things I can fix up just so you see these. All right. After I put in all that information, when I want to go and actually print out my receipt, I can type in here console.clear. You don't have to do this, but it'll clear the screen first. It'll look a little nicer. So taco receipt. Now, these don't line up. Can I make them line up? The answer is pretty much yes. Instead of putting a blank space, I'm going to put a \T here, and that means to tab this. So I'm going to put a \T here, and I'm going to put one here, and I'm going to put a couple of them here, and I'm going to put one here, and I'm going to put one here. I'm just guessing here, but I think it's going to make it look a little nicer. All right, the only thing I have not done yet is I have not come in and put in my other totals. All right, so in other words, from the receipt right now, I pretty much have this done. Name, address, city, state, zip. I guess that was supposed to, well, let's see what I said. Name, address, city, state, zip. So I put the first name followed by the last name. All right, you can do it either way. Address, city, state, zip, that's fine. And what's left? Number of tacos, okay. So we'll put here number of tacos. And we'll put in a couple \T's here. That might need another one too. I don't know. And it doesn't really matter. And this was num tacos bought. And I will put on there a .toString. It'll work even if I don't, but that's considered a cleaner way of doing it. So .toString. All right, so that's done. What else was left on here? Then a bunch of dashes. All right, so let me put in those dashes. And after those dashes, I want a space, so I'll put a \n there. And then I want subtotal and tax total. Copy that. So I want subtotal. And I wanted there to be a blank line before that. And that'll be subtotal. And I want that formatted in currency. And then I want tax total. And I want that formatted to currency as well. And finally, I want final total. Isn't that what I called it? What is it? Final total. It's got a capital T. All right. That should be the entire program. Now, it may not look perfect, but it'll be probably pretty decent. So file, save all, and let's run this. Let's get rid of all these \n's when we ask the person to enter their information. We'll just keep it simple. So enter first name. So I'm going to get rid of all these. All right, so let's run it again. Enter first name, Jeff. last name Scott, address 755 Parr Road, city Wentzville, state Missouri, zip code 63385, number of tacos bought 5, and there's my receipt. All right. Again, it's not perfect. It's not beautiful. I guess I could have removed that blank line here. I think we're supposed to be dashes there or something. My question is, and again, I'm putting you on the spot here, Aiden, because you're the only one here. Is there anything in that program that doesn't make sense to you? All right, then not hearing anything, I'm going to assume that it does make sense. I guess in here, in the output, what is it? There was not supposed to be a line between subtotal and final total, and after the subtotal and tax total, there was supposed to be this, but it was supposed to be dashes instead. It's not that big a thing. I mean, if you were to write the program that I have here, but changed it for whatever it is you're supposed to be changing, you would get, if not all 50 points, then darn close to it. So I'm going to save this program right here, but I'm not going to send it to people. And the reason I'm not going to send it to people is it's very close to the one you're doing for the test. I want you to write the program for the test, but I will take a second. Okay. I will take a second and go back over it. So we wrote a console app. We queried the person for these 7 pieces of information. 6 of them were strings. 1 of them was an integer. In addition, we set up a decimal constant, which was our price for each taco. Then we calculated the subtotal, which was the price of a taco times the number of tacos they bought. Then we did the tax total, which was the subtotal times 8.25%. Then we added together the subtotal and the tax total to give us our final total. And if that makes sense to you enough where you understand it, all right, you should be fine. From there, we created this receipt. All right. Now, even what you're asked to do as far as the way the receipt looks and stuff won't be exactly the same as this on your test, but it's pretty doggone similar. So again, for the test, you will have 3 problems. The first problem is the equivalent of asking you your name and having you print it out. That's about how hard it is. The second one will ask you to read in a few values and do some mathematical calculations with them. The third one is similar to what I'm showing here. The first problem, all 3 of them are console apps. The first problem will be worth 25 points. The second problem will be worth 25 points. The third problem will be worth 50 points. Now, when I give out the test next week, I will spend the first 5 or 10 minutes of the period going over it like I just did. The other thing I will do, and I'm going to have to change my share here. I get that. So give me a second and I will change my share. All right. Let's see. So the other thing I want to make sure people understand is you are going to have to go into the folder that you have that has all of this stuff right there. And in there, you will have a folder that's called HOTS. That's where you are to put your test. So when you start up Visual Studio and you go in there to create a new project, make sure that the location is your location where that exists. And you can just call the solution HOT or HOTS or something like that, hands-on tests. All right. So I'm assuming, like I said, and you're kind of on the spot here because you're the only one who's actually in class right now. But I'm assuming if that doesn't make sense, you will ask. And I'm assuming for the rest of you, all right, that if anybody has a question on that, you will ask. The test will be mailed out or emailed out to you, all of the students, Monday morning. It'll be there by 8 a.m. All right, you have until midnight to get it done. Now, if for some reason, and I've already been contacted by at least one person, all right, you've got a conflict, you've got to let me know, and offline, so I don't want to do it here while we're taping, but offline, you've got to let me know so we can arrange another time for you to take the test. All right. All right. So with that said, let's go over it. I'm going to change one more time. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change my screen share again. All right. And I'm going to start going over here in my window, chapter 1. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot here because you're the only one here, but feel free to chime in if you'd like. So I am going to go over these because I said I would do so. All right, so I'm going to go over these right now, and I'm going to try to explain each one. So if you have a question, please ask. But there's about 75 total problems, 60 to 75 between the 3 tests. But we should still be able to do these and be finished by 9 o'clock. After we finish with these, that's it for today. All right, and I'm hoping I have no problem with the team's recording today. I am not, I'm going to repeat this, I am not going to be putting this particular video out on YouTube. It will only be available under Teams. The reason for that is I'm giving you answers right now. I'm giving you answers for a test, for 3 tests, and I don't want those where they're out in the public, so to speak. So, number 1, a desktop application runs, and that's the ones we've been doing. So it runs, the answer I put down, I think that is right, is C. It runs on the user's computer. Number 2, which of the following is not a platform that you can use to develop Windows desktop applications? All right. And I believe that the answer is D. So some of these aren't going to be real relevant to stuff we've gone over in class. I understand that. And you know what? I've said this before. When you turn in your homework, when you turn in these written tests, if you've given a good effort, you'll get most of the points, even if you got some of the questions wrong. Number 3, which of the following is not a .NET programming language? The answer is B, JavaScript. Visual Basic is, C# is, and actually what F# is was Microsoft's kind of attempt to write their own JavaScript. Number 4, which of the following statements is true? And the answer is B. .NET Core is newer than .NET Framework, and it is cross-platform, meaning that you can run it on a Windows machine, on a Linux box, on a Mac, etc. All right. Number 5, the primary components of .NET are its class libraries, and the answer is D, the Common Language Runtime, which is also known as the CLR. Number 6, what is the purpose of the .NET class libraries? The answer is A. They provide pre-written code that can be used by .NET applications. Number 7, what is the purpose of the CLR, or Common Language Runtime? The answer to 7 is B. It manages the execution of .NET applications. If you have questions as we're going through any of these, please feel free to chime in. Number 8, before a C# application can be run, it must be compiled into a language called, the answer to this is B, Microsoft Intermediate Language. Sometimes Microsoft is abbreviated MS for Microsoft. So sometimes rather than seeing Microsoft Intermediate Language, you'll see MSIL, which is actually pronounced missile. All right, but it's B for number 8. Number 9. An assembly is, and again, the answer is B, an executable file that includes the missile or IL. Number 10, a solution is C. It's a container that holds projects. You've already seen that. Number 11, which of the following is a way to open the Form Designer window? All right, the answer is B. Find the form in the Solution Explorer and double click on it. Number 12, to write the C# code for a form, you use a Visual Studio window called D, the code editor. Number 13, to work with the files of a solution, you use a Visual Studio window called C, the Solution Explorer. We've been working with that. Number 14, a window that appears at the edge of the Visual Studio IDE, which is an acronym that stands for Integrated Development Environment, all right, is called, the answer is A. It's called a docked window. All right. Number 15, within Visual Studio, which window can you use to change the version of a .NET that a project is targeting? The answer is D, the project properties window. We didn't do that because we don't have to change that. Finally, number 16, when you run a Windows Forms project, Visual Studio displays the projects first. The answer is A, form. All right. If you need any of those repeated, please say so now, or else I'm going to go on to chapter 2. All right. Chapter 2. Okay. Number 1, to customize the way Visual Studio works, what command can you select from the Tools menu? The answer is A, Options. Number 2, in Visual Studio, what's that?
I can't see your screen.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for letting me know. Yep, I got to stop and redo my share here. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're good.
So let's see. You see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so it should be chapter 2. So number 1, to customize the way Visual Studio works, what command do you select from the Tools window? The answer is A, Options. Number 2, in Visual Studio, what command of the Tools menu can you use to change the development settings that affect the way the menus and toolbars work? The answer is C, Import and Export Settings. And I want to show you that. I'm going to show you one thing when we get done with all these, because it's something I promised to show you and didn't. So I'm going to do this after we get done with the chapter 3 test. Number 3, to create a new Visual Studio project, what do you select from the new project dialog to specify the type of project you want to create? The answer is C, a template. Number 4, which control do you use to allow the user to enter text? The answer is B, a text box. Number 5, which property of a text box lets you prevent the user from entering data into a control? The answer is A, read only, and we've already looked at that. Number 6, what is the name of the Visual Studio window that contains the controls you can drag onto your form? The answer is B, the toolbox. Number 7, 2 properties that are common to both forms and controls are the answer is C, the name property and the text property. Number 8, which key can a user press to activate a button that's set by the cancel button property of a form? And the answer is A, the escape key. All right, so remember, for the cancel button, that's the escape key. For the accept button, it's the enter key. Number 9, what form property do you use to activate a button control when the user presses? And I guess I just answered it. It's the accept button, C. Number 10, the tab order determines the order in which, the answer is C, the controls on a form receive the focus when the user presses the tab key. Number 11, to prevent a control from receiving the focus when the user presses the tab key, which of the control's properties should you set to false? The answer is B, the tab stop property. Number 12, what property of a form sets the title that's displayed in a form's title bar? And the answer is C, the text property. Number 13, to create an access key that will move the focus to a text box, you, B, set the access key property before the text box, okay? Number 14, access keys let you activate a control by A, pressing Alt plus another key. And we did that. Yeah, I don't think that's that important a thing, but they, for whatever reason, I guess for completeness, they show it here. Number 15, what would you set the text property of a label to if you wanted the label to appear as shown with the letter N being the access key? All right, and the answer is B. So before that letter N, you would put an ampersand. Number 16, to change the file name for a form or a solution, you use B, the Solution Explorer. All right, we've done that already. Number 17, the text property of a control determines D, the text that's displayed in the control. Number 18, when you run a form after you've used the form designer to design it, but haven't added any code into it yet, the answer is B. The buttons don't cause anything to happen, but technically, other than that, the form technically works. Number 19 is the first time it's going to be a little different. To select 2 or more controls, actually C would work and D would work. All right, so there's really there's actually more ways of doing it than that. So C or D would have been acceptable. Number 20, to align 2 or more controls after you've selected them, you can use C, the format menu commands and the layout menu buttons. And there's other ways again as well. Number 21, when you align or size a group of selected controls, the changes are made relative to D, what's called the primary control. All right, unless you need any of those repeated, I'm going to go on to chapter 3. All right, so I have to change my share. I get that. So let's do that. All right, so you should be able to see chapter 3 now. All right, so for chapter 3, number 1, an object is D, an instance of a class. Number 2, a class is A, the code that defines the characteristics of an object. It's also known as the blueprint, but that's not on there. Number 3, instantiation is the process of generating A, an object from a class. Number 4, an operation an object can perform is called a method, B. Number 5, which of the following is not defined by a class? Which of these 4? The answer is C, notices. I don't even know what that is. Number 6, to refer to a property of an object in your C# code, you code the C, object name followed by a period, followed by the property name. Number 7, what does the following code do? It does B. It calls the focus method of the TXT monthly investment control. Number 8, to say that a C# application is event-driven means that it responds to B, user events and other types of events. User events like you clicking a button, but you can also do things like set timers in your program. All right, so that would be the other types of events. Number 9, what is the term for a method that responds to events? The answer to number 9 is D. It's an event handler. Number 10, what event does Visual Studio generate code for when you double click a button in the form designer? And the answer to number 10 is A, the click event. Number 11, what is the name of the method generated if you double click a button named BTN process in the form designer? And the answer is B, BTN process underscore click. So that's the key, is the underscore that's right there on that one. Number 12, blocks of code are enclosed between A, braces, also called curly braces. Number 13, C# statements must end with a semicolon, which is the comma with a dot or period above it. Number 14, a syntax error is identified in, all right, it's actually identified, it's C. It's in the code editor window and in the error list window. And as an example, if I forget to put a semicolon on the code itself, it'll be red there, but then I should also get a message that's down in my error list window below that. Number 15, which of the following is not a recommended way to improve the readability of your C# code? The answer is B, use all capital letters. Don't do that. Number 16, which of the following is a valid comment? The answer is D. That's the only one that is valid. All right. Number 17, which of the following statements is true? Now, I read through these. Number 1 says you can't use C# keywords in a comment. That's false. No. Number 2, comments must appear at the beginning of a line. No, that's not true. Number 3, comments can be inaccurate or out of date. Well, that's true. All right. D, comments can make the program run slower. Technically, they can, because the compiler has to get rid of the comments before it compiles. So if you've got a 1,000,000-line program and 500,000 of those lines are comments, it'll run slower. So I would have accepted their C or D for number 17. Number 18, to insert the starting code for an if statement into the form, you can use, and the answer is C, a code snippet. Number 19, to change the name of all occurrences of a variable, you change the first, after you change the first occurrence, you can use B, refactoring. Number 20, when an application encourages a problem that prevents a statement from being executed, all right, that's B, a runtime error occurs. In the lecture that I redid this morning and put out on YouTube only, I show examples of all 3 types of errors you can have in a program, those being syntax errors, runtime errors, and logic errors, and I demonstrated each one. Number 21, when you test an application, your goal is to A, find runtime errors. All right. Number 22, what is another name for a runtime error? The answer is B. It's also known as an exception. And again, you will see that if you watch that video. Number 23, a data type, B, displays the value of a variable or property. In chapter 11 of this book, we're only through 3 chapters, but in chapter 11, we'll have an entire chapter on debugging. And a lot of that stuff, if it doesn't make sense now, will probably make a lot more sense at that time. Number 24, which of the following choices adds a comment that says currency format to the end of the line of code? The answer is D. Finally, number 25, which of the following statements calls the close method of the current form? The answer is A. All right. Now, I don't know if you need any of those repeated. If you do, let me know. Otherwise, there's just one other thing I want to show you. All right. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back in. Of course, I'll have to change my share. And I will change it here back into Visual Studio. We can use this one right here. That's fine. In fact, let me, because it'll be easier to show it to you this way. All right. So I mentioned to you the other day that you can move this stuff all over. These things are called dockable. So I can click here on my Solution Explorer and then click up here and I can move that. Now it's moved. I don't like the way that looks, but some people might. I can move this one. So I can move that over to here. All right. But typically what happens once you start doing that is like, oh my gosh, I wish I had it back to the way it used to be. So I'm going to show you how you can revert it back to the way it is by default. So I'm going to grab this one too, and I'm going to grab that one. So basically I've thrown all 3 of these in different places. All right. And now I decided I wanted to go back to the way it looked at the beginning. If I want to do that, I go to Tools and I go down to the very bottom and I choose Options. So Tools, Options on my menu. I'm wrong. It's Tools, Import, Export Settings, the second last one. Tools and Import and Export Settings. All right. Then I want to choose Reset All Settings right there. And I'm going to click Next and it'll say, hey, do you want to save the way this old thing looked? And I don't. So it says Next. So it says, do you want to save this settings, this setup? I don't want to, so I just say no, and I click Next, and I want to make sure here it says Visual C#, and I click Finish, and close, and boom, everything is bounced back into place. All right, and there's my toolbox, so everything is back. So that's how you do that. All right, and I'm not asking, so please don't answer this, but Aiden, if you were the person who had talked to me about having plans for next week, then please email me afterwards. All right. And we can set up something. And if you say, I don't know what you're talking about, that's fine too. So the rest of the period today will be lab. And I just want to mention one thing. You might say, well, that's fine. Why are you doing it? Why are you giving us so much lab now? I have one person who's in this class. You know who you are. And one person literally who just got their new computer yesterday and is still in the process of setting everything up. So they're a little bit behind the 8 ball, so to speak. All right, I've got another 2 or 3 people who have emailed me saying, I'm having problems with this or that. I had a Teams meeting with one student online yesterday for about 15 minutes or so. So I want to make sure before you take your first test next week, everyone is as prepared as possible. So again, when you take that test next week, you've already heard this, I get it. You will have 3 console apps you will have to create. The first one will basically ask you to put in your name and then print it out. That's 25 points for doing almost nothing. The second one will be similar to the console one that we wrote, where we put in the 4 test scores and then gave the average, except you'll be asked for a couple more numeric things like minimum, maximum, or something like that. I don't remember what it is. The third one is very similar to what we just went over on the screen, the one I gave you. So again, you will come in, create your variables. So this is declare variables. This is initialize variables. So you'll do that. You'll declare variables, then you will initialize them with a console.write, and then you do a bunch of read lines. If it's a numeric variable, you will have to use the convert function. All right, I don't really even need this console.read line there anymore. All right, then we are going to calculate the subtotal, the tax total, and the final total. You will do something remarkably similar to this when you are doing the last problem. Then I cleared and create and print out receipt. And that's what that was. Don't need that. So again, last time, when you run it, it'll look something like this. I don't know what their zip code is, so. And it should come out and print out and look something like this. Hopefully all of that makes sense. If any of you either watching right now or any of you happen to be watching later, all right, and you've got any kind of question, please get a hold of me, all right, today or tomorrow or even on the weekend. So Monday when you come in, the test will be there. I will spend no more than 10 minutes going over everything. It won't take very long. And then you've got until midnight to get that turned in. So with you being the only one here, unless you have any questions, that's all I've got. And again, if you were the one who would talk to me about a situation next week, let's just do that through an email. All right. So that's all I've got for today. Lab the rest of the day. I am expecting that by next Sunday, September 4th, by midnight, you will have the written tests. I still want you to turn those in, even though we went over them. All right. You're going to get 10 to 20 points for each test. So I want your written test turned in. I want your labs turned in. I want your homeworks turned in. And by the end of the day, Monday, this next Monday coming up, the 29th, I'll want your test turned in. If you have any questions on anything, please email me right away at jpscott@rankin.edu. Other than that, I'll be here tomorrow, but it's going to be a lab day. So I'll just literally be online for 5 minutes saying it's a lab day. All right. And I'll be online. All right. So thanks for coming. At least I had one of you here, and I will talk to you soon.